we're having
Well,
December 8th minutes and we've decided.
well,
that-
I have it. I moved for those, October 27th amend approved minutes. I moved to approve the minutes and Marguerite, you seconded.
Mhm.
Wait, October
Oh,
27th.
thank you.
No, this is
This is-
during the December 8th meeting, the minutes for October.
Oh, sorry.
Right, so that, James moved, Marguerite second, okay. So with those emendations, are we okay to
Sure.
accept the minutes as amended?
Grant, I fixed the table, so it's,
Okay.
names aren't squished together. You said there were other things?
Yeah, under documents, the three VHB designs that we've been referring to were referenced at that meeting and voted on.
Added that in.
So we should include that there. And the larger point that I had was that, this wasn't, that meeting was not posted as a virtual meeting, so there was an in-person one at the, public safety facility. And so I'm wondering, should we cut this, first two lines of the remote virtual meeting took place through the governor's orders?
I thought
Yeah,
it was an owl meeting.
it was
Well,
posted on, like, you could watch on Zoom, but it
we'll
wasn't.
just put the location of it
Yes.
and then,
Oh, that's true, we just put, public safety facility training room, what we did previously.
On,
And then I think, since it was not a virtual,
we don't need to
we
include
could
that.
either edit that or.
And so it is done.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes as amended for December 8th? All right,
Second.
that is Bill, and the second is Grant.
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin, okay, and the vote, Grant,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Andrew,
I,
James,
Aye.
Landry, I.
Aye.
Kevin, all right, unanimous, all right, and now we are up to December 13th. Do I have amendments?
The same thing, we should put the location, so we'll call it hearing room. At the top, and also cut that it was a remote virtual meeting because it was in person.
Yep.
All righty, any other corrections?
Although that one was at town, it's here,
It
wasn't it?
was McCullough,
McCullough.
yeah.
Move to accept December 13th minutes as amended.
Okay, that's Kevin, second Landry, Grant,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Andrew,
I,
James,
Aye.
Landry, I.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so unanimously, all right, our last set is gonna be.
Wait, who moved in second?
I think that was,
That was you, Marguerite.
I moved and Kevin seconded, no, I moved and
Vice
Grant.
versa.
Do we?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right, last set of minutes is January 11th.
I've got something, 4C. Once again, I'm the defender of the spelling of Ms. Spaniff's name. This time I want to give her an E on the end of Columbia. That's correct, isn't it?
Ah,
That's what I mean. We'll add that, we'll add the E. And then, but the line says, Vine Bank comments that the road design and subterranean engineering work will not be affected by future work, emphasize whatever has value. I don't know what that means.
Doesn't that mean we should all
Yes,
emphasize whatever has value? Or it is important to emphasize whatever has.
yeah, I'm remembering what I wrote, trying to get, okay, maybe it should be comments, the road design and subterranean engineering work should not be affected for future work. And that the group should emphasize keeping what is currently there.
Not affecting what's already in the ground. with the
Yes.
design it. This is drainage.
Any other emendations, corrections?
I have a few.
All right,
Again, under, members of the public present, Bonnie Fenner should have an E there as well as, we should add Patty Burns Fiore. Since you mentioned they're on minutes. And
Got it.
then under 4F, I think we should change design 4 to approval, revisit the design by Sally Water and Patty Burns Fury. Just to clarify. Also, they don't have official numbers, so. And also, can we add that, and may vote on spending for design bid at next meeting, since we don't. If we don't do it today, then. That's it. And that's it.
Okay, do you have it down?
Yes.
Good. Any other recommendations or correction? No documents, used during that meeting?
Oh, sorry, we have a couple more. Again, we should have location, so I'll call it here in room and get rid of the virtual.
Yep.
Sentence at the start.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to accept as amended?
So moved.
All right, and do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Grant,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
James,
Aye.
Wendy, aye.
Aye.
Bill?
No.
Okay, and one no, one nay. All right, that is it for the minutes. And thank you very much. Now, before we move on, the next section of the agenda is public comment. Do we have any comment from residents or Bonnie, Vanna?
I just have one question on the process.
This is stupid, but I don't know if the owl can hear you unless you're like at a mic, yes.
I'm confused over the process of the town meeting.
Do you want to like? be sure
Maybe
to
Mr.
use the mic?
Bennington. can
Yeah,
answer it.
right.
One of the articles is on the land swap, I
Yes.
assume would be the first.
Yes,
The second one is on this parcel of land, the design.
is on a, motion to transfer up to $250,000 from free cash.
So the value of the project that you can design is $250,000 tops. Is that in the warrant article? Not to exceed that?
I would,
If not, I would suggest it, because I plan on making a motion.
pardon me?
I plan on making a motion on town meeting floor not to exceed that.
Okay,
I would be,
I will go back and,
I think it would be
look, but-
wise to put it in here
Yes.
since that's a number of,
Yes, no, I agree. I agree.
thank you.
Okay, so that was, Bonnie Fannick, if the audio didn't pick up, making a suggestion that in the second related town meeting article, that it state that there is a $250,000 cap on the amount of money that could be spent on the park.
Can I make a comment to that?
Sure.
I don't believe that's our warrant article, so that's really not for us to.
These are,
I don't know.
Select board.
So it would be brought to them, I would say.
I recommend that Mr. Dennis.
I will do that.
All right, and this is, we're in public comment, so
Thank you.
all relevant. Any other public comment? Yes, Karen. Thank you for coming up front so we can hear you. I don't know if that's gonna do it, but I'll aim this in your direction.
Thank you. Just a few quick comments if I could, and sorry that some of these questions are very basic, but they're not meant to be effrontery. I'm kind of a rules and process person, so to the extent that you have answers to these, I'd appreciate it. But one just comment first, I've heard a mischaracterization of citizens opposing comments and objections as quote unquote criticisms, negative or not forward-looking. In other words, we're not cleaning up a mess or something. I just want to comment that taxpayers have the right to object to spending, especially public money on private property, which is illegal, without any of these mischaracterizations. Taxpayers have a right to say a flat out no. I personally don't want to park. I think we have a perfectly good road there that's safe. It is a straight and safe road, well engineered. I see no legal or safety reason as to why that would be moved. Again, it was relocated, well engineered. It has the necessary clearance and turning radius for safety vehicles, so to correct somebody's mistakes or errors or wrongs by compounding this into a birthday cake with whipped cream and a cherry on top, I as a taxpayer object, and that's not being negative. Ms. Galligan recommended in writing to return the $290,000 grant to the state in her email chains. So I agree with that. I think that $290,000 should be returned. I absolutely completely object to giving over a perfectly good straight town road and the oldest road in town, one of the oldest road in town, that could also well be an Indian trail. That may well have burials underneath it, according to local historians, and around it. I object to giving that to a private entity for the purpose of gaining a few parking spaces. That makes no sense whatsoever. And the unfortunate fact that there's been money spent up to now, and due to some of these errors, that's a whole different thing. Basic question again, conflict of interest law involving abutters, and this unfortunately involves you, Marguerite. But according to advisory opinion 05-02 on mass.gov, section 3, the law prohibits a public employee or volunteer from voting on matters affecting abutting or nearby property. Property owned by any organization which the public employee is an officer, director, partner, or trustee. So I'm wondering if this state law applies to you in any way, if you ask the State Ethics Commission for clearance, or how does that work?
Could you give us that advisory opinion number again?
It's 05-02, it's on mass.gov, section
you.
3. If you don't know the answer to that question, maybe you can look it up or call State Ethics Commission tomorrow and ask them for an opinion. I see it frankly as a conflict of interest, unfortunately. I don't see how you can, even for all the right and good reasons that you feel vociferously of your involvement, I see state law as prohibiting you from voting on an abutting property and the development thereof. But you can ask the State Ethics Commission, they're the experts on this. This also applies to you, Mr. Dennington. I don't understand, maybe you can explain to me, I'm sure you can, the difference between a committee and a working group. Because you're serving on this committee, voting on a matter of a development matter, but you're also on the Board of Selectmen voting on the same matters. So I'm wondering, and state law clearly prohibits that. So in my opinion, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck. I mean, it seems to be, you call yourselves a group, but it's functioning like a committee. Maybe you can explain the difference to me and the public, you know, what the difference is and whether or not you've gotten clearance with state ethics.
Well, not prepared to get into a back and forth with you.
It's not a back and forth, it's a straight up factual question. So if you don't know the answer, maybe you want to clear it with state ethics and come back to the public in the interest of clarity and transparency. Sound good? Sound like a plan? I mean, these are straight up state laws. It's not a affront to anybody. I mean, it's just abiding by rules. On your agenda tonight, you have the design and park design, moving of an intersection, taking of a roadway, land swap, et cetera, MOU. Again, I see this entire, I don't know, episode or whatever you want to call it, as an outgrowth of an iteration of a series of errors. I wonder about your spending authority and your legal authority. I have a legal opinion that I paid for that says you don't have a license. The license is referenced in the new MOU, okay? It gives certain provisions. Those types, you started out with a swap, calling it a swap, right? It was sold to the public as initially, at least according to my Southborough, the northeast corner of Main and 85, which was where the food trucks are located. So Karen Galligan had given a concept plan to Beth Mello at my Southborough, which she published at the time of the grant, the granting of the grant, the $290,000 to the town. So again, it was outlined in yellow and sold to the public as here's the swap. This is the piece of land, okay? It turns out later down the road, and that, by the way, I believe was attached to the emergency grant application. Okay, and the plan was unsigned, undated, not stamped, no footnotes. It identifies town property, which really isn't town property, right? Yes, you're shaking your head, yes. So it was outlined in green when there should have been a footnote at least. So the state understood it to be something that it probably wasn't. I'm not sure. It's confusing at best. Then later comes a reciprocal license agreement. Okay, that didn't work out, right? That is a mess, right? Or it was signed on November 24th of 21, after the site's been raised with trees, after $20,000 of gravel paid for by the town has been, put on the site. The site's been completely engineered. I mean, it's just a spending of public money on private land that's very clearly prohibited by mass law. Okay, so you dive under a license agreement that isn't even, in the opinion of at least some attorneys, not valid.
Can I just parenthetically ask a question? Just because I'm familiar with a lot of the things you're saying. although
Yes.
Not the part of the conflict of interest about women.
Yeah.
Karen, what do you want out of this situation? If you could wave a magic wand and get what you
Slow
want,
down.
what would it be?
What would it be? It would be, number one, slow down. Slow down.
Mhm.
Follow state law. Understand it first, read it, understand it, apply it correctly. If you don't understand the documents in front of you, which it's clear to me that people don't understand what they're reading. It's clear to me, just one more thing. There's a checklist, a legal checklist that goes with the MOU that clearly nobody has or has read. Okay, there are technical flaws in the documents, but there's a solution to this. You don't have to take my word for it. Have town council issue a 1-paragraph memo as to why he believes he's got his license is not an easement, and then have it reviewed by an attorney who specializes in that sliver, and there are many.
But
I make a point of order.
sure.
With all great respect, Karen, I think these are all wonderful points that need to be discussed. I don't think they're in front of this committee where we don't have the license, we don't have the MOU.
Yeah.
None of that is before us. And if I have, sorry, I'm not sick, I just had a tickle in my throat. What I have always said, my position, joining this committee, is if town meeting determines to do the land swap at a future date, this March, that I wanted to be part of the committee to design the best park possible if it were to be built. And that was a hypothetical park that we have not decided. This committee has no authority or review or obligation to review the license, the land swap, all of those documents are not this committee's purview. So it's really not the right place for this conversation.
With all due respect, I disagree.
Okay.
Okay, because there's a bigger, wider context here. And we're all thinking intelligent people who can read Massachusetts law. Okay. Also, there's a common sense discussion to be had. You're asking about design, okay, and tonight. I object, okay? In the democracy of the right to object, and as a taxpayer. That's a perfectly well-designed existing road. That's one of the oldest, if not the oldest road in town. Why on earth? Because it's highly trafficked, it's engineered well, okay? It's a cut through for traffic at peak traffic hours right now. If you shorten that distance between where it is and closer to the intersection, that in my opinion is dangerous. I don't think the engineering is very good. I think you've heard from other engineering criticisms of downtown in general, of which I won't go into here, but I think there's been some pretty terrific mistakes made.
I have 2 comments. One, it would be really nice if you could ask the select board if you could participate in the working group so we can get it solved correctly. That would be lovely. I'd like to bring your expertise on board to help us out here. I really would.
I'm not sure
Because
how,
I think that.
I'm not sure how
you do the
useful it
right
would be
thing.
because
Yeah,
I object to the existence of the committee. I think it's a phony rigged committee that's set up with a phony rigged mission. The outcome from the get-go was rigged. In other words, it's so narrow. The narrowness dictated the outcome. Come back with this predetermined outcome, right? You can't deny
well,
that.
I
That's-
think we're seeing it from a different, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, but I think we're seeing it from the point of view, we all want something there that will work well for the town. We can't erase what's been done.
Yeah,
We can't. I mean,
Yeah.
we could all sit in jail for
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah.
If that helped, but I don't think
Yeah.
it would, right?
but see, I don't even agree with that. I say, this is privately owned property. It's none of your business,
I'd like to move on to some of the agenda items that were on the.
All right,
okay?
got it.
So
Thank you.
hopefully duly noted, this is opposing opinion. I say, let's not spend one more dollar on it.
Okay,
I think it's already engineered correctly. I think if you try to move a road next to a park that we didn't ask for, that's dangerous.
all right. So duly noted, I just want to make sure that if there's anyone listening in on OWL who was not able to hear what Karen said, could they just raise their hand and let me know, because I want to summarize it if it wasn't. Let's see what we've got. I don't see any hands up. Okay, all right.
So I'd like to end with
That right.
spending authority, just to focus on that and following, you know, mass law. Who actually has the authority? Let's follow an order. You asked me, what would I ask for? I would ask to slow down and understand better the process and involve the public, because so far it's not making a lot of friends. Asking the taxpayers, you know, committing a series of errors and then asking the taxpayers to pick up the bill is a rotten way to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right. All right, any other public comment before we move on to plans for park design? Do I have any hands up? No, we don't. Anybody in the room want to comment? All right. We have with us today, I think we have both Michael Clutchman, whose name I'm probably mangling, and Greg Russell, the VHB project manager for the Main Street project. They have looked at the design that was roughly drafted by Patty Fiore and Sally Waters, and have agreed at no current charge to participate in this meeting to talk about both the cost and the engineering of a design that's similar to that design. So I guess the best thing might be to just promote Greg first. Do you want to?
Can I
Sure, Freddie, what?
make a comment?
Yes.
Why I chose to not approve the minutes from the last meeting is because it wasn't recorded. So I have no background to say, that was my understanding, it didn't get recorded, am I correct?
Correct, but there's no law that it has to be.
I understand, but there's no way to prove what my understanding of what this meeting agenda was supposed to be that we discussed. So people's memory can fail, but my recollection is we left saying that we were coming back to this meeting with the members of the committee, of the working group, to bring any designs and ideas for the plan, because while Patty Fiore and the Sally Waters plan was one alternative plan to VHB, that there were other ideas in the committee. That's what I just passed out here. That's my plan. And it's actually, I will say, based on the very good components of the Fiore Waters plan, although there were many components of that plan that from day one I did not agree with, and the committee actually voted that in our interim report, I believe, and also in another meeting. So I have a problem with a consultant giving us information based on a plan that this committee never voted, that we were approving, and two, that supposedly, my understanding was we were going to talk about what this working group, which has never sat down and said individually, based on the 3 plans from VHB, the blank plan from the land area, and then this one from the Fiore Waters. We've never sat there and said, we want this, we don't want this. And additionally, in the plan from, Patty and Sally, there are components that don't meet the requirements we've talked about all along, and there are components that we've never discussed as a committee. So to have an engineer review that and tell us what it would cost to build it, to me, I object to.
All right. Duly noted.
I don't, were we actually at that point? Because I'm fully in favor of discussing what Freddie handed out. I've got a few things to add of my own, so I'm supportive of having we're at the point where we're just turning something over to the VHB.
No,
Right?
And before that, we get to discuss what the committee.
Yeah, so I'm supporting, I personally support a fulsome discussion of whatever you just gave us and whatever I've got to say and other people, so.
And I would just clarify again that this is based on the outline from the Fiore Water Plan, but taking out and making comments about other things that have been discussed in the committee, but additionally things that I never had the chance yet, as a committee member who's been attending these meetings since June, never had the chance to put down here.
okay, so can I make a suggestion? When VHB is on and they've got the Burns Fiore plan, my conception of this would be that we all say, I'd like to do this over here, I'd like to do that over here, why are we doing this, can we do that? In other words, we're not married utterly to the Waters Fiore plan. What we're going to do is take
I
that
object
as
to
the
that being
base,
the basis.
right?
I object a non-member plan being the basis of what we're reviewing. When I've spent a lot of time on this, a lot of the components and thoughts that the committee has discussed are not on this plan. I think.
Yes, but the point is we can talk to VHB and say, we want to add this, we want to add this, can you do it? The problem we're at now is none of us is a landscape engineer. We have to get, for instance, an accessible path running up there. We don't know how to do that with a gradient. That's why we need to talk to VHB.
I understand that, but again, and committee can decide. I think using a plan that we've never agreed on as the background basis. And I object to that plan, and I have since it came forth. At every meeting we've discussed it. I find that
But I'm
just
not
not
seeing
great.
that much of a difference. You've got one additional path.
There's a lot of differences.
Okay, so why don't we go to the Burns Fiore plan and look at it and say what you want on it that isn't on there now, and see if they can see if Michael.
I want what's on this plan, not that. I don't want to discuss that. I want to discuss this plan as a member of the committee. That's what I want.
Okay.
And I acknowledge that it had a lot of the components of the Fiore Sally Waters plan.
All right, so discuss, go right ahead.
Well, VHB didn't get a copy of this because I wasn't allowed to, I thought we were coming here to discuss it, not just me, other members. of
Do
the
you have it
committee.
on, do you have it on digital?
No. I have to print out.
All right, so VHB won't be able to do this. So why don't we discuss the plan now?
We have a,
If you'd like, I can scan that and email it to them. That would be very helpful.
that'd be very.
Thank you.
Can you just give me their email address and have them email it home for
Yes.
slide back in?
Yep, I'll do that right now.
Just a one page.
And I'm sorry, I don't have this one out. Thank you. So the written.
Russell at VHB.com.
Russell.
Two L's. At VHB.com. And then the other one is gonna be. See if I can get that. It's gonna be. I think that's gonna be MKLUCHMAN at VHB.com.
MKLUCHMAN. Okay.
Thank you very much. Jim. That saves a lot. Okay, Freddie.
Okay, I'll run through it, and we're getting it shortly, but this is also a handout. I, wrote the key points, and I'm acknowledging some of these things have not been discussed on the committee before. So I'm not saying this is agreed upon, right? But for the background, the Open Space Preservation Commission was asked to write a support letter for this grant, and we did, based on it being a pollinator garden component to park and being a historical walk. I don't know, I've been since told that wasn't in the grant, but from day one, I've been told that was a key component of this. When we got the plan that didn't work out, that was not a plan the Open Space Preservation Commission ever helped design, agreed to. All we agreed to was what the plants would be 100% native straight species or pollinated. So this year is going, and bear with me, I am not a designer, and I use tracing paper on Patty's plan, Patty and Sally's plan, and all of their components for the history walk, I agree with completely. Or I shouldn't say I have no objection for the most part. One of the main things, I'll start out with native plants, and I'll read this so that people watching at home can hear this, if that's all right. Native plants, the working group has consistently supported native plants in the park, except for areas of lawn as needed for specific activities. I will also say that I have been at meetings where my memory is the Board of Selectmen also agreed that it should be native plants,
Was it 100% native plants?
except for lawn. At the public forum, many people expressed the desire for reduced lawns and lawns only for specific activities where needed. Increasing native plantings are goals in both the master plan and the municipal vulnerability plan. Southborough zoning code requires native plants. The project requires site plan approval. There is a precedent with the planning board requiring straight species native plants, no cultivars. Don't waste time and consultant expense, including non-native plants. You go to a hearing with non-native plants on it, take a look at what's been happening in the last few years.
Okay, but to the best of my recollection at the public forum, there was not 100% consensus on using native plants.
I didn't say there was. I said there was a lot of people who talked about it. And this isn't about the public forum was to get public input. It was never that the public forum was designing the park. Right?
Yeah, no, I disagree with that.
No,
one
we're
right
not.
there.
We're not.
This is, I'm a member of the committee. Don't interrupt me, please. It's the first time I've had a chance to go through. What
Okay,
I
Freddie,
wanted to see.
okay, keep going.
Pollinator habitat. First of all, the landscaping will be professionally installed. There's some crazy talk that the Open Space Preservation Commission is going to be planting the pollinator plants. Not going to happen. It's a $250,000 project. It is not done by volunteers, so that's not an issue. Rain gardens are the only native perennial pollinator gardens that I'm proposing here. I sent out an email, well, that comes up later, never mind. Native following shrubs and trees recommended by the OSPC will recommend pollinator habitat goals. Shrubs and trees locations and final choice to be determined with consultation with landscape designer. There's things like soil and sun and other conditions that will have to come into play if you want, that's why you hire a professional. We recommend plants are chosen from Dr. Jagir's plant list. Map with prevailing winds. The working group has never discussed a wind block for cemetery to my knowledge. I don't remember.
We did. Yes, we did. We discussed that the ash trees were dying and that we needed to use evergreens to be a wind block.
Well, that's my memory. We can go back and look at the meetings. My memory is that the Historical Commission was advised years ago by their own consultant on a CPA project to plant trees in the old burial ground. That was where the wind block was suggested many years ago. The working group did, however, and I believe we had many conversations about not using a solid wall of evergreen trees that will block views. We had this discussion about the noise. So we don't want a solid wall of evergreens, maybe 3 or so American holly trees with shrubs in between, which tend to provide a wind block without being a solid wall.
This does not agree with my recollection, but.
I'm not saying that. Let me state again, many of these things have never been said in a meeting of this committee because I haven't discussed my views on this because I thought we were going to have a meeting to get together with every committee member being able to do that. So this is a mixture of my views as well as what some of it of what I recall having been discussed. So the map of prevailing winds is important. I asked for that in day one. The next thing I asked for a sun map, showing the path of the sun throughout the course of the year at different times of day. Show areas of shade from trees when library children activities would be there.
I'm sorry, Freddie, who did you request this on?
The first meeting I was at, I requested that we should have a blank slate. Remember this? I asked for the blank plan with a sun map and prevailing winds, get the basic. We can go back, I believe it was a Zoom meeting, so that would have been
All right.
recorded, right?
So you were requesting that we obtain this.
No, this was to VHB when they came in with their plans. And I got the blank map plan saying that this should be shown on it because when you start a plan, you come up with the basic information like the contour lines, which we didn't have at the beginning. You know, and we also don't know the area of the high water table on the maps that we looked at. So then for the lawn, determine where and how much lawn is necessary. Just to go back to that last one, the sun map. You don't want to plant trees and have the shade not on the area where you're having children sit during story hour, if that's how it's going to be.
To the best of my recollection, Michael Clutchman mentioned this when he presented his design where the sun was. Where the sun was.
Not in specific relationship to where the tree should go. Most, you can see a map, a design will have the sun shade the areas, and the sun moves throughout the year, so we want to know where the sun is in the summer. So
Good point.
during the hours when the kids are going to be there. Lawn, determine where and how much lawn is necessary. Native grass alternatives for non-heavily traveled, non-kids sitting on the lawn. Using native ground covers. All of these things reduce the need for, these are all recommended in our the municipal vulnerability report, native-based solutions to climate change. This is the way the world is moving. Rain gardens. So I sent an email with videos I took December 16th, I believe. It was a light rain for a few hours. The ground was saturated. It was streaming down the parking lot, and that one area was full. I can imagine, and I am saying that there were improvements from the infrastructure that was put in the prior infrastructure, but that land is saturated. And one of the ways you work with saturated soil, high water tables, is you install rain gardens. And if you notice in the VHB plans, the original ones, they had rain gardens. So I'm just bringing that back and also acknowledging that they need to be the ones to decide where and how big, because it's an engineering solution often, although this isn't based on stormwater, it's based on high water tables. And if you're going to have flooding there, we're not trying to find some mitigation that a landscape architect can help us with. You're going to have a park, if it gets built, if town meeting approves the land swap, there would be a park built that's not usable many months of the year because it stays saturated. And I know that on the library grounds, after a rainstorm, you think it's dried up and it's got 2 inches of water underneath the grass. Soaking wet feet. So if you have a way to mitigate that, it was already recommended by VHB. Let's investigate that again. That puts in the rain gardens using the native plants from Dr. G. Gear's plant list. And for those that don't know, the Open Space Preservation Commission has been working with Dr. G. Gear since 2015. Southborough is one of his major research sites, and we have actually had successful results from using his recommendations on keeping some species from being extirpated from the town, which are headed towards extinction statewide. So we've had good results. We continue to do work for that, as well as it's good science, and it's just good landscape. So we have that. The rain gardens kind of went into this, but Native gardens are per the OSPC recommendations. Plantings can occur now to mitigate and manage water issues. When and if the library parking is built, that was shown on the Peoria Waters Plan. We've been told by Marguerite that that's probably not for 20 years. If you can put this garden in, it's not a huge expense, it's not hardscaping. 20 years, you're gonna put parking lot there or library expansion, you can create a new stormwater mitigation system. We haven't spent a lot of money on like big oak trees, you know, or not that that's big money because it's gonna take 20 years to grow, but you can replace if the rain garden's not needed, you can replace it somewhere else, and that's in 20 years, so. The other issue was the sidewalks, and I've been saying this at meetings, is that it doesn't make sense that the only entrance to the park is from the sidewalk on the other side of the proposed St. Mark's Street near the parking lot, across the street to get into the park. And when this originally started, and I believe it's on some of the VHB plans, we discussed, this was connecting downtown, people walking from downtown. So on the plan I drew, sketched, and I'm not great, but I did the best. I have a sidewalk going in from the 85 side, right? Because,
I'm sorry, you mean a path that connects in from the 85 side?
did I say sidewalk?
Yeah, you said sidewalk.
Well, there will be, supposedly the town is putting a sidewalk in, right now it's only halfway up, which doesn't really make sense, it just stops. It's going all the way up 85, and that there should be a connection there from people walking up from 85. And that would be accessible. Again, you need the landscape architect and the designers to know how the grading works to make that accessible. I put it somewhere near where, there was another one, but it was way more heavy hardscaping. The other thing I put in here, well, wait a minute, let me finish reading this, and then I'll go over the few comments on the plan. So, I put the sidewalk over, I put the path into the park coming from the new sidewalk, maintaining the other two pathways that Patty's and Sally's plan included. But I noted, and I questioned, well, that comes up next, wait a minute. The shrub border, I put a shrub border along the edge of the park, along the new St. Mark's Road and along the sidewalk on 85 to keep kids from running off into the street. There are shrubs that are fulfill the need within the Dr. G. Gear list for pollinator habitat that are attractive, that are, some are low growing, some are high growing. We already in the past had discussed, we didn't want a solid wall blocking the view, but you can have some small shrubs and some tall shrubs. That's why I called it SBVH, which is shrub border, various heights. It doesn't have to be all one shrub the whole way. You get diversity and interest. And one of the points of having pollinator habitat is you have flowering species throughout the season, not just one plant that blooms for 3 weeks. Then the other one is handicap parking. And I looked, and this is obviously for the library to talk about, but I'm aware the library's parking lot fills up. And if you take away 2 of their spaces at the far end of the library for handicap, it can only be used for handicap. That means those 2 spaces, unless someone's going to the park, they're not available for the library because no one's going to get in a wheelchair and go down the library parking lot. They're not going to switch out the
Okay, let
handicap.
me just, if I can clarify, because Patty's design now has the same path that you've got here.
That's her path.
Right. So the issue is with the library, and I believe this is gonna happen. Here's the library parking lot. There's gonna be a path that runs parallel to that parking lot, all the way to the library door. It's gonna be accessible, it's gonna be 5 feet wide, and it's gonna run parallel. So the 2 handicap parking spaces that are right next to the library now where they need to be, can be appropriate. And that anyone who needed to with a chair or a walker could use the accessible path all the way in.
So that's the first I've heard that there was definitely a plan to put a library.
It's not a definite
sidewalk.
plan, it's just a plan.
Because I've seen it, and so we're taking out the pollinator garden on the library grounds to make that
I
5 feet
don't know.
wide you are. So anyhow, that's in the plan for the future. That park's there. We don't need handicap parking up here for the park. I was going to suggest on this plan that you can add a couple of spaces into the park because we're already not building that area out as a park because of future library expansion need. So I threw a couple of spots in there. So if it's okay with the library, I would just mention it and put it in. So if you go back to this design, I put in the rain garden, I showed the utility box. The rain garden in the lower end is exactly where that ponding area is. And if you're not going to put a rain garden in, you're gonna have to spend some big bucks on some infrastructure to keep that dry. It's only a benefit. I put a second rain garden in because VHB's plan showed two. I'm not sure where the higher water elevation is needed. Again, that is up to landscape architect, designer to put in. Above that, I said, I think I got carried away with the stone wall, so that's the tree line, but I showed the flexible lawn. I think the reason I put it up there was because, and it's sort of where Patty Sally's plan had a perennial garden. That is a drier area, so even if you put rain gardens in, it's going to be damp down there. So if you want longer, full season use of the parkland for kids to sit down on the ground, I put the flexible lawn area there, but after I did that, I realized the path shown copied right from Patty's plan is a little bit too close and the lawn should be bigger. Again, the landscape architect or designer can do that. That path, depending on the handicap accessibility and the grading, could go further down where it says oak, and that's an awfully big oak tree, so that got carried away. Could go further down there, be a little bit more of a curve and then swoop back up. But this is not a final plan without knowing any of those. I mean, it's an estimate. So then the flexible lawn would be bigger. I left the circle for the, which was on the Waters Fiore plan, the podium with historic information, all of that stays the same. The history walk stays the same. Above that, where it says windbreak, evergreen tree protection for OBG. My point I'm suggesting is a historic code restoration person hired by the historical commission had recommended putting trees within the old burial ground to protect the stones from acid rain and other things. And I would strongly recommend, not that you maybe do or don't need a windbreak. Again, I don't know which way the prevailing wind is coming, but you want to consider that at some point in addition. Don't do the lesser activity and not take care of the real need of that burial ground. So that was why I made that point. What I showed here is American holly. It's a tree on Dr. G. Deere's list. It would be a great tree. It's evergreen. It's very slow growing. You know, we can have more discussions on that, but the only other native evergreen is like arborvitae, and that's, it's not, I just, anyhow. But I thought with the American holly with some taller shrubs mixed in between would give you the windbreak you're looking for and provide better habitat. I had the understory shrubs showing. The DT is deciduous trees. We want oak. It's the #1 tree nationally to plant for saving our birds from, we've lost 30% of our common backyard birds in the last 50 years. Not rare piping plovers and other species, common backyard birds. That's not sustainable. It's continuing on. And one of them, there's many reasons, but one of the main reasons is they're starving to death. They don't have enough food to feed their babies. And the oak tree is one of the best trees to supply the needed resources, which almost, even your seed-eating birds, almost all of them feed their babies caterpillars. And caterpillars come from butterflies and moths, laying their eggs. And guess what? They co-evolve with native plants, and they only, for the most part, lay their eggs on native plants. So these birds are dying because they're starving to death. And there's pictures of that to back it up, and scientists across the country have documented it.
Freddie, here you've got oak, and deciduous.
There's some other trees on Dr. Gier's list.
What would be the deciduous that you would choose?
I would, again, depending on the sun, the soil, the water, on Dr. Gier's list, and I'll say another reason why I didn't just make them all oak, because as Worcester found out, when you plant just one species of tree, and you get an insect that comes in and eats that tree, you've lost it all. So, you know, putting a variety of trees, even though oak is the best tree, it's not the only tree. Dr. Gier has other trees on his list, and when I say his list, it's because it works. And it creates an attractive landscape. The other ones are the little ones that look like flowers. Those are flowering trees. We had discussed redbud. There's also plums. There's a few other trees on his list. Redbud is an attractive tree. I pushed a couple of things back, though, to be aware of. They're not near Route 85 because they're salt spray intolerant. But they can, you know, as long as they're not being doused with salt, they can make it. The plum trees and the oaks, I also want us to be aware of the problem with the oak trees getting too big near the roads and then having to be cut down. So, and also that we want them providing shade. I'm not sure if there's anything else on this plan that you may not understand, but I think that's the most of it. But basically from what Patty had, and Sally, the history walk is intact. I think using the trees and shrubs, I know there was concern over who would maintain perennial wildflower gardens. And I understand we're not there yet. We're going to have to get there in the future in the landscaping of not just this town, this state, this country. But for now, using the trees and shrubs, which are more easier to maintain under our current landscaping practices, and then the rain gardens. And I would be really happy to take you to a major rain garden that was installed in Worcester after the city came in with a street relocation, dug up a hole. It's way more industrial than what's happened here, but it has some of those same, I don't know what those things are, stormwater infrastructure. And it's at a church property, and they said, can you let us put the rain garden in? And, you know, it's more of one of those old detention basins with stone, the stone riprap, so it's not attractive. After they planted it, and these were members of a church, it's very attractive. So you can see how this would look. And that's that.
Okay, good, thank you. I'd like to throw the meeting open to the members of the working group. Could we have your feedback, questions, comments, and your ideas also for the space?
Mind if I?
Andrew? Yes.
If you put side by side Patty's most recent plan and this plan, you're right, there's a lot of commonalities. And I like the idea of having, the path that connects to the sidewalk that goes along Route 85. I think that's a great idea. And I also think that you're showing bringing back the rain garden, which was in the original rendering from 2021. I like to see if we can do that. And I think Greg had said in one of our prior meetings, I think there's already been maybe some groundwork for that done, but I'm not sure. And I have also had the same observations of going to the site recently, and there was a lot of rain in December, and you could see not only at the current intersection of the street is there a big puddle, but also in the site of the proposed future park. There's been, a lot of ponding, and by the edge of the parking lot in where the library borders the proposed park area. So I think those are helpful suggestions, and also thinking about how we could, best use our time this evening, since we have Greg and Michael here. I was thinking as a next step of and I don't know if we still need some discussion as a working group to discuss all the things that you have proposed here, but as a goal is to have maybe another kind of just rendering, which would incorporate some of the suggestions that you have, while also getting some feedback from them from a engineering and landscape design perspective. What would be the best way to harmonize these things and then kind of keep moving along, where as of December, when we did the interim report, it seemed like of the drawings that we had seen so far, the one that Miss Fiore had prepared was the one that seemed to get the best consensus from the working group, but I would like to incorporate some of the suggestions that you had proposed into that.
Can I respond to that? This here is basically the same light touch except for the path from Route 85. The rain gardens added in are, she had a perennial garden. Everything else is pretty much the same as what it's just showing more plants than you normally add on the other plans. And I don't think there's really much difference there. The big difference between the rain gardens and the path is just the type of plantings showcased on this plan.
Does anybody mind if we call in VHB at this point?
Yes, could we?
Well, to what end?
I'd
I-
like to hear their responses.
Right, I will just say that I think there's more to be added. I have material that I'd like to bring into play at
Oh,
some
good.
point,
Okay, good.
but feel free to, you're running the meeting, so
No, I
Go-
threw it
go.
open, yep.
straight ahead.
Also note, I believe that in our last meeting, we talked about the possibility of inviting VHB in for a cost estimation.
Yes.
That's what they're gonna do tonight if we get to them, yes.
But so rather than going through a full design and sending that for new engineering plans, I thought we were just gonna pursue the idea of getting a free cost estimation of what the overall cost of this potential park would be. And that was the value of the sign going. I don't believe that we discussed actually going out for full new design plans out of this meeting.
Wait a second, let me see if I understand you.
So
I thought we were just asking about the cost.
maybe it makes sense, we could bring in Greg and he could just give some
Yes.
feedback on the
Absolutely,
process
okay,
here.
let's promote Greg.
You asked if you got the plan.
Which plan, yours, yeah. Greg, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Good, we can hear you, and Freddie wants to know if you received her plan that was recently emailed to you like an hour ago.
We did. So I have it up now. And so just a couple things to note, we were kind of really just looking at, there was some question about just the accessibility and the paths and everything. So we were just, based on the information that we had, we had agreed to kind of look at how, how that worked with what is there now, what would need to be done to get those paths to work, where the circle on the plan that we were provided was given. And I also just want to go back, because I know Freddie mentioned the sidewalk along Route 85. So as part of this project, we had designed and permitted and everything a sidewalk from the end of the Main Street job down by the library up to the West Campus driveway for St. Mark's, up to the flashing beacon. So that section, and it was originally included in the original bid and was taken as a alternative and was taken out just due to cost. We have also, the town had also requested a survey and a conceptual design of sidewalk up to the Framingham Road intersection. So that's kind of where that stands. So I just wanted to just clarify that. But, yeah, so looking at Freddie's plan, like Andrew and Freddie's both said, there's the main pieces of the other plan were provided are there. Looking at and I was out there yesterday just to take remind myself of what it looked like. The circle, as it was shown on both of these plans, from a grading perspective, would be about, anywhere from 6 inches to a foot below the edge of the curb of St. Mark's, or the edge of the road on St. Mark's. So it'd be fairly elevated. And then, yep. And, so we have, in order to get, so I just want to, and obviously the topography is different than what it was, but, that would be about, give or take, about a foot below, where the pile of dirt, the top of the dirt is now. So you would need to provide an accessible path. Both of these plans now, show two potential, or at least two potential accessible routes. The key with the straight path up from the library is that you're basically going to be at a fairly constant 4.5–5% slope all the way up to that circle. If you go kind of like straight up as it's shown.
Yes.
Yeah, which is about the maximum that you can, which is, give or take the maximum that you can use for a accessible path without having to provide constant leveling areas. So there are ways to do it, and it can definitely be made to work. The other option, to make a slightly less steep path, I guess, would be to kind of like come down and come, on Freddie's plan, if you kind of looped around that center oak tree and tied into her other path, then you're talking more of like a 3% grade or so. So and again, depending on those grades, depends on what type of material you use. The goal, part of the goal of the project, by putting some curbing up on the top of St. Mark Street, once we come past the cemetery wall, was to prevent some of the stormwater from sheeting down into the parking lot, which hopefully in and of itself should help with some of the water issues that are happening down by the library. We did have the rain garden in there that was tied to the larger circle that was proposed, and to kind of take all that water that would sheet flow off and catch in that rain garden, that the underground portion of the rain garden, so the infrastructure is there. It was installed.
All right, that's the sump, right?
Yeah, so it's the thing that's sticking up.
Yep.
That's like the overflow. So if too much water were to collect in the rain garden, it would go in that area if it couldn't infiltrate, and that's tied to one of the catch basins out on Route 85.
Greg, just a question. You've built accessible paths before. Do you think a 4 to 5.5% would be a difficult accessible path, and then we might just swing it around, as you said, past the oak tree and make it more serpentine and make it happier for everybody who's in a chair?
So, I guess, one of the things I would look at is just the materials that you're talking about. So if if it's going to be a paved path, 5% is fine. If it's gonna be something other than pavement, so like, you know, packed stone dust or something like that, you want it shallower or less steep, just to avoid anything washing away.
Now, packed stone is permeable, but paved is not permeable, right?
Well, you can definitely use permeable pavement. But again, once you get one of the issues with permeable pavement is there's a layer underneath it. Once the water goes down through it, if the grade is usually over 3%, it goes down the underneath portion of the path and then comes up through the path at the other end. Just because that's the fastest and the easiest path for the water to take. So once we get over 3%, we don't usually look at if we're talking permeable pavement, we don't usually look at that type of material.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
I don't know what it is, but there's a interesting surface to the accessible paths at Tower Hill in the new Ramble. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I don't know what that material is, but so we have not been committed to or discussed what type of material the path would be beyond being handicap accessible. I don't believe so. I don't know if that's something suitable, what it would be, or if there's other alternatives that come into play, but I just don't want to make a decision on the grading without investigating other types of surfaces, because I found that material very delightful to walk on at night, and I saw a lot of people in wheelchairs or walkers using it.
I think we know.
I'm trying to think. It's like I don't recall it off the top of my head. I was there a couple months ago, but it is, it's like it is a nice surface down there. But I can definitely look. We have contacts there. So.
And I just wanted to say, as far as the grading, which I have no knowledge of, on the plan I drew, I was trying to be honoring the Waters Fiore plan where the circle is for the benches and the history walk. But I think the committee could consider if another location for that with the trails paths in a different configuration made sense for making it more accessible. That is, I mean, this here is, I don't think, for me, I'm not an engineer. I don't have the whole grading area. So, if pushing it over to the side and making one of the paths, I was even looking at the one from Route 85. If it went on the other, I'd actually drawn that before you said it on my handout. If it went on the other side of the oak tree connecting to the path going to the library parking lot, I'm personally not committed to where the paths are or where the circle is. If there's a better way of doing it that makes it more accessible, because the main thing we want is accessibility, right? From day one. So I think that is an easy enough, like moving the pieces around to make it other things fit in, except for the the rain gardens. You don't want pathways going through where it's really wet.
Yep.
But
So,
aside from-
So I mean, this circle is significantly smaller than the other one, so it's, it would be easier to move, but it's, where it is now provides the best access to the town, back to town hall. And then as long as the sidewalk is built on the other side, it provides that kind of quick access to 85. So there's nothing wrong with where it is. It's just a matter of, but it could be shifted one way or the other. We don't want to shift it probably anymore towards the cemetery, just to avoid any additional grading issues or impacts to any of the remaining trees, or to provide that additional planting areas there.
So I think, Greg, my question is, we have the elements of path to the library, path to the road, a third path going to the sidewalk on 85, whenever that sidewalk happens. I think the large oaks, which I think are gonna be white oaks, were kind of an element. The rain gardens were an element. The evergreen trees, Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, to do the wind buffing for the cemetery, the ashes should not live. And then the other part of it is that circle. One of the elements of that was that you could stand there and look at all of the very important historical things for the founding of the town. The church, the mustering ground, the cemetery, and where the Nipmucks had been. And I think aside from it being where you could see all those four things, it could slide around in the design fairly a bit, right? Ready? You agree? Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure about the elevation, but yeah,
Yeah.
point. And I had mentioned that because, you know, I'm a member of Pilgrim Church, and in a history talk we had there, you know, it was shown that like what was needed to create this town. And because the farmers were tired of walking to Marlboro all the time for church. And it was the three things that are visible here, which is, you know, why the town was able to be, I don't know what they did back then, but get a grant from the king to be separate from Marlboro, was the mustering ground, the church, and the burial.
right. So that if a person were standing in the middle of that circle, wherever it happened to end up, and they could see those four things, that would sort of, that would fulfill the Burns Fiore. I've seen a yes and a no.
Okay, well, no, that was my original idea for placing that plaza where it is because, as Freddie said, and as I explained to you the other day, Marguerite, in order to be considered a official town by the governor, you needed to have three things: mustering field, the old burial ground, and the church. And if you stand in that plaza at that point and turn in a 360-degree view, you see all of those things. Also including the original Nipmuc Village, which is basically where St. Mark's is, original St. Mark's School, Burnett Burial Ground, Pilgrim Church. I mean, that's kind of the center of the history of this town. And that was my thought from the beginning. The state gave this town a grant to build a history walk. And this could be a situation where this is the beginning of that.
Could I ask, Greg, did you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Can I ask if you're on that property and you're just saying a few feet? Is it right there where you're showing it, or is there any wiggle room to?
No, I think when we originally talked about this, the purpose of putting it up in that corner was to keep it as far away from Route 85 as possible, in order to mitigate as much noise as possible. And that's as far as you can get away from 85.
Yes,
If it's okay, can I ask you a question, Craig?
please.
Oh, a few feet from, who cares? A few feet is, no, it's just. Like, the
that
VHB, there was one plan where the main plaza was down right on top of 85. I can't imagine having things there sitting as the trucks are rolling.
Yes, so in other words, sort of where you put it. I just had one of the working group members has it.
I just want to ask Greg a question.
Sure, go for it.
First of all, Greg, thank you so much for being here tonight. I appreciate it. I'm sure the whole group extends our thanks as well. I just want to just get to, if you can speak a bit about the cost of these plans, because I know VHB created the 3 plans for this site. We've been talking about some plans that have been generated here in town. I'm just wondering, like, in your experience with what we've shown you, how much does the cost of a project like this change depending on how you move around the elements in it?
You know, it obviously, in a case like this, it has less to do with moving the elements around and more to do with the materials. Because the site is already, you know, disturbed, excavated. You know, there's there'll obviously be grading that needs to be done, but it's not, part of the work's already been done, so it's really the cost of the materials and the types of materials that are selected. In case anybody didn't know, there's something called inflation going on, which has impacted construction materials as well. So some of those, and certain construction materials fluctuate all the time. But for instance, concrete sidewalk, the cost that was originally in the bid for this would be considered a excellent cost for what it costs now. So there's been, I don't know, the cost of concrete has gone up 10-15% over the past year or so. Just a quick, when I did a kind of a quick calculation, if you're using just straight concrete sidewalk with minimal decorative pieces, if you take the road out, you're talking probably for the 3 paths, the circle, the plantings, and the benches, you're somewhere in the $100,000 to $150,000 range, probably.
And that is with concrete, which were you saying that is more of a more expensive material, or that's middle of the road for these kinds of pathing materials?
So generally that would be cheaper.
That's
that
the
would
cheap.
That would be that's the cheap. So now, then there's, stone dust might be a little, like for the path, the paths that are going to the library or Route 85, that might be a little cheaper, depending on, and again, these costs fluctuate day to day.
I'm sorry,
But,
is stone dust loose stone?
No, it's loose, but it's not, it can be, it would be packed down, so it would be accessible.
So,
I've got a question on my piggyback off of yours. if that's
yes,
okay.
please.
So Greg, this is Andrew.
Mhm.
Could you just, so the group understands kind of the process of in terms of expense? Because one of the things I think we're trying to balance is the fact that our charge is to come up with a recommendation concerning the design of a proposed park, but the construction of this would be contingent on positive town meeting vote on the land swap, because the land is currently owned by St. Mark's, and I think there's understandable hesitancy about spending further money to advance designs of something that may or may not be approved. I certainly hope it is approved at the March town meeting. So could you talk about kind of the different levels of, for example, one step is it possible to take the ideas that are being talked about here, just like the process we did in the summer, and then have another drawing of that, and then, roughly how much would that cost? And then the next would be, if I understand there's a certain engineering you need to do to get to a preliminary plan to be included as part of to be part of a bid package to actually get bids back, and how much that costs, just so that the group has those kind of ballpark numbers and understands the process, because I think that informs some of our decisions going forward.
So first off, and one thing I want to caveat with the construction costs, when you get, so one of the reasons why this job was lumped in with other jobs is the bigger the job, the better the prices you get. When you bid a small job, prices tend to get inflated a little bit. So that's one reason why we generally try to kind of lump these smaller jobs in with a bigger job. Because when we bid it the first couple times, we didn't get the prices we wanted. So that was the reasoning behind that. We can, it really depends. The, design costs, I'd have to take a quick look at it. We can, and it depends on how much we can reuse from what we had already done. How many paths we're talking about. We had our initial design had a path coming out basically right at the corner of 85 and then realign St. Mark Street, kind of tying to that wheelchair ramp. So so you had the opportunity when you when you came across the crosswalk, you could either keep going on 85 or go right into the park area. So if there's, like I said, elements that we can reuse, it makes it, significantly easier. The initial, any initial renderings, shouldn't be too much. Like we generally carry like a couple, it's a couple $1,000s to do those, but
Could you include them as part of the overall cost?
yeah, we could. I mean, if we were going to design, if we were going to design the whole this new section, yes, we would just we can lump all that in. It would just all get lumped in together. So it's really a matter, the actual design cost would depend on what the final solution is. I mean, we kind of, our intent with coming to this meeting was just to kind of, get an idea, understand what everybody wanted, just so that we could provide accurate information for the town. And like I said, we can, based on this, we should be able to use, if we were to do something like this, what Freddie's plan was, or the other plan, we should be able to use a good amount of what we already had engineered. So as long as, as long as that's the case,
And my question is, how
That's Freddie talk.
Freddie, sorry, going in front of the planning board for site plan, how does that impact if there's any changes required, or how far along do you go, or before you make a final plan in case there's something that needs to be changed? I can't imagine that it would be anything huge, but there's always the chance that there's something that we don't know about right now. And is there a preliminary way of reviewing that, or?
yeah, I mean, I'd always, if we're dealing with, if we're going through site plan review, we'd always want to, have a preliminary meeting with the town planner, the planning board chair, just to, the goal being have that up front so that everybody is on board with the same,
So before the town would invest any significant funds in the plan, you would have that type of a conversation, and not necessarily wait until you get through site plan to do. You have to bring something to site plan.
so usually what you go to site plan with is a pretty final plan. So, we would take, these, kind of like these two sketches, go to site plan, go to the town planner and say, generally speaking, what are the, what do you need to see to kind of go to get this through? Um, and this is just for, this is just a general, not even necessarily related to this project. That's just how I would generally go about it. But, if, this committee or the, public comment or whatever, if there's another, if there's a consensus, you take that, we could, put a quick plan together, bring that to site plan, or bring that to the, the town planner and the planning board chair, and kind of have a informal discussion about that before making, just so we tried to capture everything in that plan, so that we'd be able to go through as quickly as and painlessly as possible.
I may be speaking out of turn, but I think that the working group has agreed that a blending of Freddie's plan from tonight and the Patty Burns Fiore and Sally Waters plan with roughly those elements and another path would sort of be approximately kind of what we wanted.
I would say we need to have a vote because that's not my understanding. I took Patty Fiore's Sally Waters plan, incorporated it in here. I don't think we need to use that other plan. And, if there's other components of this plan that people want to add or want to take out, I think that's what you go with. I say this plan I presented tonight replaces the Fiore Waters plan.
So I think we really need to dig into this, to sit down and hash out what we want out of this plan. So do you think, do we have any other questions for Greg, or because maybe we should start talking about that, like how we're going to hash that out?
I wouldn't mind hearing from Michael if he's still on. Dutchman?
Just don't want to keep you guys here all night.
No worries.
Michael, are you with us?
I am. Thank you very much.
Could you tell us what your thoughts are on what you've heard in the last hour and a half?
Yeah, no, I think you're getting there. I think we, definitely, we can come up with a plan that brings in all the ideas we heard, which was the two plans here. Really appreciate Frankie's plan, sort of the details, really agree with the ideas on the drainage and the rain garden locations and making sure that's part of the plan. I think that's very important. And adding accessibility, so I don't know which plan you want to say, or, both or whatever, but I do think, all of the positive ideas here, we can definitely work with. So, I'm encouraged. So I don't know, procedurally how you want to go about it, but I think, all of the ideas really can be accommodated.
So I think maybe as a next step, maybe we need to have another just working group meeting just among ourselves to try to flesh out some of this stuff.
All right,
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Michael, we're on a very strict budget, We're gonna do this for as little money as we possibly can and have it still be very beautiful. Can you do that?
Oh, yeah, no, I think, from what I heard on the budget, I think you can definitely do that, in the end, less is more, but we have to figure out exactly what the, right
Yes.
moves are at this point.
It was like touch design won the day. That's what we're after. We can do that for us.
But so the type of drawings that you had put together, those are not things that could be included in a bid package to get a more complete price, right? You need a more fully engineered set of plans after that, right?
But those are sketches, right? Or no? Do we need engineered plans to get a bid?
I think that, our next goal might be, and this is maybe something we're talking about the next meeting, is just a next sketch that brings together some of the things that Freddie talked about with the Patty Burns Fiore plan. So that we have a sketch that shows all those together.
Yes,
Yes.
so we should,
And that would be a sketch among the working group creating that grant or.
Well, we want something that we're all on board with.
I think.
Yes.
There that, we're almost there. I mean, we're talking like, I'm not quite sure what the gradients are for the paths, nor what we should be made out of. But I'm in agreement on the plantings. I'm in agreement on the fact that 3 paths is good. I'm just not sure, like, for instance, I don't know whether if that plaza is up high, is it harder to get to than if it's down lower? And I'm trusting the VHB can tell us the optimal place for the plaza.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the gradient's gonna, I don't know about the materials. So that's where I'm
so,
depending on
One
them.
question that we, I believe, voted or by consensus said we were going to vote on tonight or discuss is there was a budget put together for doing these plans and are we moving forward? It was $20,000 to $20,000 allocated by the selectmen. And the question is, for me, and I want to take a vote on it because I want to be on record personally. Are we going to move ahead with spending that money before town meeting votes on the land swap? And
so like at all, not even tonight, but just any time before the town meeting?
anytime, the question is, are we going to, as a committee, and, you know, it's a vote, I believe, spend money on the plans for the project before town meeting has voted on the land swap.
I think we need to consult with the chair of the select board on that issue because I think that she can give us guidance and she did once already.
So should we
I'd like to hear from Kathy. on
like Craig and Michael go? Do we have any other questions for
that. I
for
think
Craig and
Megan
Michael?
might hear it.
Oh, okay.
Did you hear what I said last week? I just want to make sure you're up to speed on what I said, because I've actually thought about it more and listened to what everybody said. Andrew and I talked, so I believe we can go forward one or two ways. Again, with the select board's goal of getting the land swap passed at town meeting, and therefore trying to take the steps that would make that happen. At the same time, it's very clear that many people want to at least have an idea of what the park's gonna look like. I said last time, I was hoping we could actually have the detailed plans, right? The plans that really included all the engineering work. I backed off that. I think as long as we can show the conceptual plan, as far as like what you have tonight. I don't think you and Patty's plans are that far apart. I will say that. I'm just throwing that in there. So I'm actually pretty optimistic you guys really are making progress. But I think we can go to town meeting there's still gonna be 2 articles, remember, back to back. One is gonna be to have the land swap approved with a memorandum of understanding that has now been drafted. And the second one will be to approve the money for the park. We heard pretty loud and clear that a lot of people want to understand what's going to cost. And the majority view seems to be they want a park that is going to be not expensive. So the number I gave you last week, it's not a made up number. So this is where we got it. And so I'm glad Greg and Michael's still here. So if you remember the combined contract that ended up being signed, that included the park. There was money in it for plants and for the park. So the park was in that contract. So since that time, Ms. Galligan has executed a change order that did several things, but one of the things it did, it took out the cost, the surface part, the plants, all the things that you call a park, not the infrastructure to build the road, not the infrastructure to put in the additional drainage, but the park itself. And that's $240,000 in change that was taken out of the park. So that's where I got my number last week. Select board knows about this number. We have a really, really difficult budget we're dealing with right now for fiscal year 24, but we have set aside in free cash $250,000 for the park. The number also makes sense because the money we got from the state for the park was $290,000. So something like 250 seems to be the right number to try to spend here, including the design work, the whole thing, all in, to get this park done. What I've heard tonight, encourages me that it actually could happen with that number. So if it sounds like to me, it bothers you that we're gonna spend $20,000 before we own the land. Okay, you're not the only person that thinks that, so we don't have to do that. Select Board thought it would help you get your work done if you had that money, so it's still available. We have set aside from the ARPA funds, but you don't have to spend it. I think there's a little money left in VHB already that you could use to, Greg, I think I heard you say 2,000. I want to make sure I heard that number a minute ago as far as what it would take to get a conceptual plan. So I think they already have that for you. There's new money that has to go to them. So if your issue and others' issues is spending money on land we don't own yet before that land swap gets approved, we don't have to do that. But we still, I think, to get this, I mean, you've been to more town meetings than I have, to truly show town meeting what they are buying with their $250,000, we got to show them something. We can't just say it's a park. We've talked about this a lot. I know it's hard to design a park by committee, truly.
Right here.
So, okay, but you made much progress. My goodness. But I do think we do. I mean, they're hitting the budget. It sounds like they think we can do this for $250,000, and that's the money that right now Select Board has in the budget for fiscal year 24 to be able to do this. But again, we don't. If you don't want to spend the $20,000, if you think it's politically not palatable, that it would help us, it would not help us get the land swap, and we've got to get this land swap done. If we don't, I don't have plan B here, what to do with that pile of dirt. So we've got to take the steps that we think will encourage the 2/3 vote that we need at town meeting to get that piece of it done. And if not spend any more money right now, using what is left in VHB to get a conceptual plan is the right route to go, then so be it.
The one point that Bonnie Faniff raised earlier, I don't know if you were here when she said, what we're talking about with that article, I didn't have it right, is up to.
Right.
Not you just
Now,
spend.
of course, Bonnie knows how to word an article, so absolutely, it will be worded up to.
So what I was bringing up was mostly nice to, we had asked for many months, I know I have asked, like how do we design a park if we don't know how much it's cost, if we design a park that is over budget, because, so it was great to have that number, whether we use it or not. And for me, though, the key point was the $20,000 we were told at the last meeting that was available for the design. And I am adamantly against it. And I think one of my reasons is, if you want this to pass, spending that money before you go to town meeting is a sure way to get some negative votes for it, because people who have been calling me saying, I heard we weren't spending money on that until it came to town meeting for the land swap or however, for the town to acquire it. And it's something like that that can shoot a project down just because there will be people who vote against and people who vote for. But there will be people who vote against that would have voted for if we spend that $20,000, and I know that for a fact.
And the converse is probably not true, so I listen, so.
I haven't heard anyone call me up and say, I want to.
That's why I just said the converse is not true, right? But the reason I thought you might want to go to town with more specific plans is you've seen how hard it is to design a park with committee. I don't think you want to design a park by town meeting. And so.
Could I ask, Greg, if we've got $2,000 in there still, can they give us a bubble design before town meeting for that?
What do you mean by a bubble?
The other ones were like, it's a technical term for it's from the air and it has like the trees look like bubbles.
Where's that, Greg, it's just going back to the spending money? Where's that 2,000 coming from? What was it allocated for? It's $2,000, not 20, but it's still money. And I'm telling you, it's not $2,000, $20,000. It's spending money when people said they were promised no money.
Right, and I told you originally on the phone, I didn't want to spend any money, and I don't. But Greg, can you hear us now?
Yes. Yep.
Do you see our quandary? We need a design to take to town meeting and we don't have any money to get it.
I mean, we have money left in our original contract to design for this whole project. That being said, we can, if it's just, if we're just talking about the bubble graphic, that shouldn't be a problem to cover with what we have already.
Can I just say, money in an original contract, if you don't fulfill that contract, does that come back to the town? I mean, I'm just concerned, spending money is spending money, and how. That.
We had fulfilled our part of the contract.
So that money's in your.
That would be
so
our,
That's your money now?
yes, that would be
Come
our,
back to the
that would be
town.
our, that would be our money. It's just a matter of, so, if it's using, I'm happy to use it to help you guys.
So let me interpret this. So they basically estimated the time they're gonna spend. They signed a contract with the town. We pay them. He's looking at the hours they spent. They've got a little wiggle room within the hours they spent in their own internal bookkeeping to say, I can do this for you. So
So-
there's no new check being
Okay.
written.
The correct, or it's not that they're holding money from us, the correct way to say that is they would be willing to, they had a contract, it's done, they fulfilled their obligation, they've been paid, but because of their own internal thinking, they could provide us some additional services for no additional money,
Correct.
for free.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say that.
Out of the,
But who cares? They said they'll do it, no new check, right?
So
I just
what,
want to be sure there's not a check
What else
sitting
do
in
you need?
escrow to come back.
so what we could do is that we could come back, we could hash out this design we have, and it would be, I think what we would get back is very similar to the three plans we saw last year, and
In appearance, but not content.
yes, in appearance.
Yes,
Does that,
that's a bubble. plan.
yes,
That's what we.
like that, but with our ideas, hashing this out. Does that sound like a good idea?
I use that to find out where the rain garden.
I think it does, but obviously, Michael and Greg, I want to be respectful of your time here.
Time.
Because, so I think that maybe open to your suggestions here, our group at our next meeting, we further discuss some of the things that Freddie talked about, how they would be integrated into the other plans, and then would maybe come back to you with some more specific instructions about getting a next bubble.
Yeah.
design
If you
that
can-
would Involve any additional expense.
if you can give it, it's like, if you can give us what you want,
Okay.
Yes.
tell us what you want,
Right.
amongst yourselves. And and I think that, and then like Kathy, like Michael said, I think you're pretty close. I think you have the baseline of what you're looking for. Just so, we want to give you what is going to help you.
Thank you, we appreciate it a lot.
That's,
I just-
whatever we can do to do that.
I think we've kind of, my perspective, I think we maybe, we're at the 2-hour mark, and I think we've kind of exhausted the
Yes,
scope of what we're able to achieve for this evening.
understood. Thank you very much, Greg, and thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it.
So to answer Freddie's question, I think we've just heard, we don't need to spend any money. We have no reason to now.
Right.
Not,
No, no, Freddie just said he's not gonna charge.
Correct. I still would like to take a vote.
No.
Well, what do
I'm not gonna order a vote.
what will we be voting on?
We're voting on giving the public confidence that we are committed to not spending money before town meeting on plans.
No, I'm not gonna call a vote on that.
So I'm just saying by not voting, there's creating a level of distrust.
I'm still not calling.
That's okay.
Well,
I can ask for it.
can I put in the minutes that at present, the group does not expect to spend any money before town
Correct.
meeting?
it has been explained to the group that there will not be additional charges. And I would like to take public comment before I end the meeting. Because I see several members from the public.
Yes, public comments.
But before I,
Regard to them,
oh,
you
is it,
wanna, like, if they need to sign off, it's fine.
all right,
Well,
do you need them to be on? to
No,
make a comment?
I don't,
Okay.
unless somebody else.
Greg and Michael, thank you 1,000 times over, and we will be in touch soon.
No problem.
Good night.
thank you, guys.
Thanks. All right,
May I ask the chair?
Kevin, yes.
So am I to understand, I'm trying real hard, that the plan here is that we're going to convene again and further discuss plans and potential plans before we turn to VHB and ask them to spend whatever they have in their largesse to do some additional design and specking work, that we're going to discuss further before we go to them. That we're not going to go tonight with some amalgam of, because that seems to be under contention, and I have been brought to my attention in the last day. Another plan, which I'd like to bring forward. I don't think tonight is the time for it at this point, because people seem exhausted, but you know, given that we spent 45 plus minutes on a newly arrived plan tonight, I think it's fair play to hear an alternate.
My question actually.
You can
comes
answer the
down-
question. I'm asking a procedural issue right now. How are we going to proceed? Are we going to meet again
Then
and
meet
further
again in a
discuss plans?
week If we can do it.
Okay, and then hopefully, I don't know how much VHB, how much lead time they need prior to town meeting to come back with the information that we've been requested by the select board to provide, but we should make our best effort to do it. I just want to make sure, because there's been very little heard from this end of the table, which is fine tonight. I haven't heard from Mr. Sines at all, and I, you know, out of respect for everybody who sits in this committee, I'd like to hear what they think.
Can I ask a question?
Wait a second, Kevin's still talking.
I just meant about your plan
Yeah,
specifically. Is there a way procedurally to submit, and not just you, but anyone else? I couldn't figure out a way to send it to the committee for open meeting law. Is there a way to do that so
You can
that?
do it if it's up for discussion, as long as you don't deliberate on it, as long as you don't give an opinion. You can send.
I have
everything.
been informed that if I had submitted that plan to the committee via email, my opinion is
Mr.
all
Hagerty?
throughout that, and that it would be an open meeting law.
You get into a problem when you share a communication with a body, which means more than one person, or quorum of your committee, when it contains your belief or opinion on a matter that either is or could be before the committee. If you want to submit something, you want to get it to the members of the committee, send it to me. I'm a member of your committee, and I'll be happy to send it to the chair or send it to include it in your package. There's your get on the job.
Thank you, because I think it would be helpful to have it ahead of time, and when you have a plan, that's your opinion, and that's why I didn't send this by.
well, for the record, this plan arrived to me from a third party, and I, during the course of the meeting, sent it to everybody tonight without comment. It is not my plan.
You
and not
did
my
send it
opinion.
already, or?
Yes. And Marguerite can,
Right, so that's basically.
send that out in the
presented.
next agenda.
I
packet.
will resubmit it as part of the package for
Right.
next time. How's that? So to Jim or to Marguerite, and I will make it as part of our packet. All right, so we're good on that. Grant, I haven't heard much from you. What are we,
Regarding what?
any of the discussion tonight?
I thought that was a positive step by Mr. Russell. Essentially giving us a plan, or, you know, design plan at no cost, especially since it's $7,000 previously. So that was nice. I agree with Kevin and Freddie that, or actually everybody, I think that meeting again to consolidate these plans, actually figure out what we want to give to VHB for this concept plan that they can then provide us for free to be the rest of the forward. So I look forward to meeting next week.
Yes, can we do it a week from tonight?
1:25.
Everybody available? All right, so let's do that for 7. And now I would like to finish with public comments, since we're at the end of the meeting. And I think Patty and then Bonnie, how's that?
And anyone on Zoom?
Well, but actually, I'm glad Mr. Hagan is here because it is kind of a procedural question that I have. Kevin and Freddie, you sit here on behalf of the boards that you serve on, correct? You were appointed to this committee because you're on historic and you're on open space.
I'm not sure if that's
Is this in the charter?
In my case,
So
correct.
my question is, Freddie, the plan that you handed out to everybody tonight, did open space approve that? Did you
No.
bring that to open space?
This is my viewpoint as a member of the committee. It is in line with our
So your role
stated.
here is representing open space.
I will tell you that there is, I believe, I want to be careful what I say here.
You don't need to.
Oh, yeah, this is public comment. We're not supposed to deliberate that. I will address that later in another
Maybe
time.
Mr. Hegarty can answer that.
This is a public comment. It's not discussion between you and other members. You're a member of the public making a comment. Public comment is not deliberation between members.
You're making up the rules as you go along. The chair has discretion to run the meeting the way the chair wants to run the meeting.
My public comment was that I believe those two representatives are here sitting in this board on behalf of those commissions that they represent. And therefore, if they present a plan, that plan would need to have been already approved by the board that they are here representing.
That is purely a personal perspective. That's not in any bylaw, any code. No, that's just your own opinion of the matter. It's not a fact.
No.
Can I offer something in public comment? 2 thoughts. From a procedural perspective, I think you need to set a firm deadline and say at the conclusion of your next, by a certain time, no more designs. You're getting to the point where the argument is, what's the perfect is the enemy of the good or something like that. You need to draw a line in the sand and say, that's it. Okay, otherwise you'll be doing this 2 years from now. It's number one, it's procedural. But from a resident perspective,
It's only 2.
I don't like this additional sidewalk, pathway that goes up the sidewalk. And I go back to when, my wife and I, which we rarely do, watched the select board meeting in our kitchen when this was first brought up by Karen Galligan and Mark Burke. And, I remember that Chelsea Malinowski talked about, when they talked about having a playground here. And Chelsea brought up a question, wait a minute, you're gonna put a playground on the edge of the busy street?
Yeah.
Are you gonna have any kind of a boundary or barrier? And she talked about how safe it was and how much she appreciated having 3 young children, and my kids were the same age roughly, once upon a time, behind the rec center, having that fenced in. My concern, from a safety perspective only, is that you're gonna have a lot of young children here at story hour. When you have young children at story hour, you have their younger siblings, and your parents trying to corral all of them. And I wonder about this pathway out to the sidewalk, number one, and number two, no matter how this is done, I think from a safety perspective, you might want to consider having some kind of a barrier to prevent kids from running out on this busy street. Also, just to put this in perspective, when you get to the springtime especially, you're gonna have high school students playing on these fields and driving these cars, young drivers. It's just, I just cringe when I think of young kids being running out here, and that's just a fact of life with young kids. I don't know how you solve it. I just saw
Well,
that.
Freddie's design has, shrubs along the border,
What's that?
which would function, be a border.
But there is a pathway.
Exactly, the pathway that problems, that extra pathway going off the street. And finally, thank you all for taking on this task. It's a thankless task, and I really appreciate all the time you put in.
Thank you for
Thank you.
your endlessly useful input also. That's, I mean, back at you. So I have marked here on this design that we will discuss that. And I will also say I agree, if it's humanly possible, our next meeting will be our last meeting for the town. Okay, so,
Two,
okay, but at least we'll get the design done. Drop dead deadline next week. Yes?
We'll see.
Let's,
Other public comment?
yes.
We don't agree, we don't agree.
Oh, God.
Could you,
Could you put a note in the meeting minutes that I left the room when you were talking to PHB because I would be a quorum of my ADA members and I just returned, so that's why I'm. So, right, and note that.
Thank you.
I don't know how we would add that to you.
Oh, okay.
Noted.
Just make the point, she left the room.
Okay, Karen, yes,
Just last, point, I'd like to agree with and reinforce some of the comments about safety. I understand the political reasons why the committee even exists and its mission, et cetera. But if you look at this back up to pure logistics and from an engineering standpoint, mixing kids with traffic, a cut-through road that avoids the light, high speed at times. I almost got hit by a FedEx truck that is already using the road, okay? I was parked on 85 and it almost hit me broadside. So it's a safety engineering thing. I asked the rhetorical question is, what is the safety engineering purpose of moving the road closer to the existing intersection and mixing kids reading and wheelchairs with it? I am hard pressed to find an actual logical reason there.
so any of your comments that you could email to me, or if you want to attend next time, because I think safety is a big part of it,
Yeah,
would be really helpful.
well, I'm here. I just said it.
Well,
It's
we-
public comment.
We didn't have any control over where the road is.
Yeah. Well, important context, because guess what? Your mission is to design a park next to a road with kids in wheelchairs, so I would think that'd be part of your thinking and feedback to other boards, committees, and the public, right?
Yes,
That
absolutely.
makes sense,
Yep,
right?
yep,
yeah.
yep.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
So Bennington moves, trustee seconds.
Right. All right, and we're meeting a week from tonight at 7.
Wait, we didn't take a vote.
Oh, no, oh, God.
Wait,
All
can we
right.
do unanimous consent?
Yes, unanimous consent. No, we're done.
No, we can't.
Wait, you can say aye. Sure.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
And member,
Aye.
aye. We're adjourned. All right. See you later.
9:21.
Yes.
Sorry.
16 minutes. Like after 16.
Okay, so I'll add that line. Left the room.
Following her, oh, yeah, left.
Well, I. The meeting.
Is she still here? You just-
No, I remember when she.
All right, let me see.
So.
Go for it.
Hopefully that. It satisfies. Current. Largest.
You'd think they're not, you'd think our pilgrim forefathers with their sedans and hashtags. Paved that road in 1727.
You'd like to know, like your word?
It is, I'm sorry.
Is that really the old road? Oh. I thought, you know, when you just.
You don't want to.
No, really.
That's what they were saying.
Well, are we still?
No,
That's not.
No, meeting.
stop.
I mean.
Stop. We're-
I'm kind of concerned with the spending.
You know,
That was.